We continue, inshallah ta'ala, our journey through the tafsir of Sidi ibn Ajib radiallahu ta'ala anhu, of the last juz in the Quran, juz amma, through his tafsir, which is titled Al-Bahr Al-Madid. So if you recall, inshallah ta'ala, from yesterday, we stopped at this very segment that you find in front of you in the shared screen. We covered the theological, to say the theological aspects or meanings that were derived by some of the late scholars. Imam Abu Saud from the Hanafi madhab, an Ottoman scholar, Shaykh al-Islam, a jurist and a mufti, and also an author of one of the key tafasir written during his time, and one of the most important tafasir in all times, actually. So we covered the theological aspect. If you recall, this is what we ended with, and we said that we will delve into the internal meanings of the verses that we covered, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that He made the earth. Let us just, just very quickly refresh our memory with what we covered, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Naba said, "Have we not smoothed out the earth like a bed, and made the mountains as its pegs, and created you in pairs, and made your sleep for rest, and made the night as a cover, and made the day for livelihood, and built above you 7 mighty heavens, and placed in them a blazing lamp, and sent down from rain clouds pouring water, producing by it grain and various plants, and dense orchards, the gardens." Now, what are the internal meanings? We covered yesterday the external and some of the internal meanings. So Sidi ibn Ajiba radiallahu ta'ala anhu is basically saying, it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the internal meaning is as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, didn't we pave the earth of the humanity, or the humanness, the essence of a human being? Didn't we pave the essence of the human being for servitude, and gave it the capacity to be devoted for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being in proximity with Him? And then he said, وَجِبَالَ الْعَقْلِ أَوْتَادًا. So the internal meaning for Sidi ibn Ajiba, he saw that the earth is like a symbol for the essence of a human being. Let me go back rather. Have we not smoothed out the earth like a bed? Now, human beings are created from earth, created from mud. So Sidi ibn Ajiba, when he reflects on the internal meaning, he's saying, it's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, haven't we smoothed out the essence of a human being? The essence of the human being. Smoothed it for what? Smoothed it for devotion and servitude. And made the mountains of the intellect as its pegs. So servitude is pegged through the intellect. And then he said, يسكنونها لئلا يميلها الهوى عن الاعتدال في الاستقامة. Saying that he's picturing the earth as the essence of humanity, and just as the mountains keep the balance of the earth, He's saying that the intellect, and he means by the intellect that is enlightened by guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This intellect, this aql, is what keeps balance for the servants. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made our essence prepared for servitude and devotion, and gave us the mountains that keeps us balanced in this devotion and in servitude, that we don't deviate, following our whims and desires, is the intellect. Now, the intellect, I want you to pay attention. The intellect for the Sufis is different than the intellect for the philosophers. The intellect has two sides. There is an active intellect and there is a receptive intellect. The active intellect is the intellect that we use in decision making, in reasoning, in all the different daily activities and the different human endeavors. This is the active intellect. They call this in Arabic al-aql al-fa'il. Al-aql al-fa'il, meaning the intellect that does. It's the active intellect. And then they say al-aql has a different side. This side is directed towards the abstract realm, the metaphysical realm. So it is, they call it al-aql al-qabil. It receives, it's the receptive intellect. And it receives guidance. It receives direction. It receives light. It receives understanding, cognition, awareness, certainty, spiritual meanings. This is al-aql that is qabil. This one is fa'il. The more this aql is given room to receive guidance, the more empowered al-aql al-fa'il, the active intellect, becomes. Otherwise, this aql that is active, the active intellect, can sometimes be hijacked by our whims and desires. So when it is hijacked by our whims and desires, it rationalizes, it reasons for the sake of our desires. This is, and you witness this, we witness this in ourselves or in people around us. When we do something wrong and then we try to justify it, either before doing it or after or both. We try to justify it. We look for reasons. Right? So this is aql that is fa'il. Its role to reason, to provide justification, to provide excuses, to provide motives. So if it's not empowered, if it's not guided by the aql that is qabil, then it becomes a servant for the whims and desires. It becomes hijacked by the ego. So Sayyid ibn Ajib is saying that in our essence, we are prepared for devotion. In our essence, we're prepared for servitude. We are prepared for divine proximity. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has smoothed out our essence for this regard and provided us with the mountains of the intellect that keeps us firm, keeps this preparedness steady. And this is as I'm explaining, this is the receptive intellect. Then he said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he reflected afterwards on وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا, and created you in pairs. So Sayyid ibn Ajib says the pairs are like عارفين وعلماء. Gnostics and scholars, meaning saints and scholars. What he means by scholars are scholars of the sciences, the religious sciences. So the pairs, he said عارفين وعلماء. And then he said عباد وزهاد. And he makes a Sidi ibn Ajiba, he makes this duality or pairs, عارفين وعلماء, meaning it's as if he wants to say that they're the scholars of the Sharia, and al-arifin of the tariqa or the haqiqa, of the spiritual reality. So you have saints and scholars. And then he said عباد و zuhad. Now the zuhad is the Ubbad are the worshippers. Zuhad are the ascetics. And then he said صالحين وجاهلين. Salihin, pious, jahilin. Al-jahl could mean ignorance, and also jahl in Arabic could denote transgression. So those who are pious and those who transgress. And then he said عصاة وكافرين. عصاة وكافرين, disobedient and disbelievers. This is connected to what we were talking about yesterday. وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. If you recall, it can mean male and female. It can mean any pair that yields, whether through procreation or something else, if you guys recall that, right? Now, the face value meaning, the external meaning is male and female, procreation, because the context is the daily lives of human beings. You go to sleep, you wake up in the morning, night is for rest, morning is for livelihood. We created you in pairs. We bring down rain from the clouds, and by this rain, we bring out the grains and the plants. So when you think of pairs in this context, it will be the pairs of males and females. But there are other meanings of pairs that we covered yesterday, so I don't want to repeat it again today. Those of you who missed yesterday's class, we covered that yesterday, so you can go back to the recording, inshallah, when you have a chance. So, but Sidi ibn Ajiba expands this to pairs, whether these pairs are opposites or pairs in the sense that they are in concomitance or close to each other. Because arifin and ulama are not necessarily opposites. Yes, sometimes scholars create this opposition between them, but it is not necessary. They complement each other. Arifin wa ulama. Al-arif is like the saint, al-alim is like a scholar. Not every saint is a scholar, and not every scholar is a saint. But alhamdulillah, many scholars are saints and many saints are scholars. And then he mentioned the worshippers and the ascetics. And he makes a distinction. He doesn't really expand on this here, but he makes a distinction between them. This distinction could be for a number of reasons. One reason only is that al-abid is a worshipper. So someone who even uses his zuhd for the sake of Allah. So the worshipper has the meaning of a believer. But you can have ascetics who are not necessarily Muslims or believers. You can find polytheists who are ascetics. One could say worshippers as well, right? They worship more than one deity, but technically speaking, al-abid is usually used in a context of a believer. Meanwhile, the term zahid, I have seen in the tradition examples where they describe non-believers as ascetics when they are. But if in our tradition, usually if they say abid, they mean abid of Allah, a believer, a mu'min. Meanwhile, the term zahid could be used in reference to other than Muslims. Like, then he said, وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا. If you recall yesterday, we mentioned one of the internal meanings of this, which is وَجَعَلْنَا نَوْمَكُمْ سُبَاتًا وَجَعَلْنَا اللَّيْلَ لِبَاسًا وَجَعَلْنَا النَّهَارَ مَعَاشًا. We said that apologize. We mentioned about the night and day. We said the internal meaning that this world, this realm that we live in, is like the night, and the hereafter is the day. In comparison, if we were to compare our life on earth and then our life in the hereafter, the life on earth is like the sleep, and our life in the hereafter is like the daytime. And we mentioned the tradition, الناس نيام, people are asleep, فإذا ماتوا, when they die, انتبهوا, they become aware, they become cognizance, they have cognition, they have awareness, they have attention, they come to realize. Sidi ibn Ajiba mentions about and made your sleep for rest. He said, أي سنتكم عن الشهود بالميل إلى شيء من الحس في بعض الأوقات سباتا أي راحة للقلوب لأن دوام التجلي يمحق البشرية. Sidi ibn Ajiba says something really interesting here. Look, he's saying that the internal meaning of sleep here, he's saying this is sleep is where one becomes concealed, veiled from what is happening around him, right? طيب. So he's saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, out of his mercy, protects his servant from the continuous awareness, of the higher realities. So there is a break time where these manifestations, this awareness, this unfolding of higher meanings takes a pause. He said, Sidi ibn Ajiba said, an-nawm here is like taking rest from witnessing. Right? From witnessing, from al-mushahada, takes a rest from that. And when that rest is taken, this is a rest for the spiritual heart. Like, how is this rest? How does it happen? It happens by being busy with sensory perception, being present with the physical world. And Sidi ibn Ajiba says that if this break doesn't happen, then the essence of the humanity from the saints would be completely eradicated. They would be transformed to something else. The essence of their humanity would be eradicated. So Allah preserves the humanity of saints by giving them a pause. A pause from what? From witnessing the metaphysical realm. When this pause happens, how does it take place? It takes place by when they become present with the physical world, with the physical realm. And therefore they become absent from the metaphysical realm. Otherwise, their humanity would be demolished, would be eradicated. So Sayyid ibn Ajib is saying that the human capacity cannot endure a forever continuous witnessing of the metaphysical realm in this world. In this world. There's an example of Sayyidi Imam al-Haddad radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It is mentioned in one of his in the book that compiles the answers and the treatises and the letters sent by Imam al-Haddad by his student al-Imam al-Ahsa'i. So in one of the questions, the book includes a compilation of Q&A, in a sense, alongside letters and treatises and short writings. But primarily Q&A and letters. I don't recall if it includes treatises, actually. It's mostly letters and Q&A. Sometimes these letters are basically responses to questions. So anyways, Imam al-Ahsa'i recorded that Imam al-Haddad once told him, he said, I know that sometimes you ask me about matters and you would wish that I would provide you an expanded answer, a thorough answer. He says, but please forgive me and please deem it sufficient. Be satisfied with the concise answers, because I'm putting effort to try to bring myself to be present with you. So I'm trying to be present with you. So this is an example of what Sayyid ibn Ajiba is referring to. That sometimes they're overwhelmed, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give them a break from that overwhelming witnessing. And then, so just as the physical sleep is a rest to prepare the worshippers for worship, same thing. You could call it a spiritual sleep. It allows them to return once again to witnessing. Otherwise, they cannot handle it. They cannot endure it. And then he goes on to speak about therefore the layl, the night, is this period in which the witnessing doesn't take place, and then the daytime is the time where the saints are witnessing these divine realities and secrets of the metaphysical realm. And then Sayyid ibn Ajiba says, وَجَعَلْنَا وَبَنَيْنَا فَوْقَكُمْ سَبْعًا شِدَادًا. He's saying the seven heavens are he called like 7 degrees, 7 levels, 7 levels of ascension, of spiritual ascension. And these 7, Sayyid ibn Ajiba pinpoints these 7. He says they are repentance, tawbah, and then wara', and then zuhd, and then patience, which is sabr, and then tawakkul, reliance, and then rida, being pleased with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, and taslim, submission. These are the 5 that apologize. These are the 7 that Sayyid ibn Ajiba radiallahu ta'ala anhu mentions. Let me just check some of the questions. Metaphysical realm means mushahada realm. The mushahada is witnessing. Mushahada literally means to witness. What do they witness? They witness that realm. Don't the Sufis also say that this physical reality is a delusion, illusion, and the metaphysical is the actual reality? When they're compared, it doesn't mean that they say that this world doesn't exist, but its existence in comparison to the existence of the metaphysical realm is like when we compare reality to illusion. So this is figurative. So wouldn't being returned to the physical be considered a test for them? Correct. It is. As much as you could also say that if they continue without returning, would also be a test. Each one is a test in its Sidi Muhammad. Each one is a test of its own kind. Okay, حاضر. Okay. Um, طيب. So the seven stations that Sidi ibn Ajiba mentioned. He mentioned Tawbah, which is repentance. And then he mentioned wara'. Now, wara' sometimes is translated as piety, as devoutness. And then he mentioned az-zuhd, which is asceticism. I hope that asceticism, right? I hope that I'm pronouncing it correctly. And then he mentioned patience, and then reliance, and then rida, which is pleasure in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills, and then at-taslim, submission. These are the seven. جزاني الله تعالى وإياكم. Is it possible to not return from the metaphysical realm? What happens to the physical body? Allahu A'lam. I mean, this is a question. I don't know. I mean, I am basically narrating what I learned from my teachers, but this is not something that it's not experiential knowledge for me. I'm relaying it as a narration. But I came across biographies, and I also learned from some of my teachers, some of the saints, they were completely absorbed in the witnessing to the point that they pass out, they die. Or they faint. And it's mentioned in the biographies of some of the saints, actually. Do you mean witnessing of Allah? Um, it, not literally, not literally. Um, it, it can be witnessing um, uh, uh, of of um, of divine names. It can be witnessing of you could say spiritual entities of that divine realm. It could be a number of things. It doesn't have to be witnessing of Allah. يعني قبض, not in the sense of constriction. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean constriction. Unless you meant قبضة, which is like to pass away. I've read a few biographies of saints where they faint when something reminds them of it, like death. Would death be considered part of the metaphysical realm? You mean death in and of itself is part of the metaphysical realm? Death is a transition to the metaphysical realm. I'm not sure if I fully understand your question or what you're referring there to. And then he said, وَجَعَلْنَا سِرَاجًا وَهَاجًا. He says, وَجَعَلْنَا فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ بَعْدَ. So he's saying that the hearts of the saints, after they cross, after they ascend through these seven stations, their hearts become like the blazing lamps. Um, uh, and this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like in the Quran, وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ. We grant him a light through which he walks through people, meaning they become beacons of guidance. So this is the blazing, they call it also, this is the sun of gnosis. So their hearts becomes like stars of gnosis, of knowledge. And it doesn't ever, it doesn't set at all. It doesn't set at all. And then وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ الْمُعْصِرَاتِ مَاءً ثَجَّاجًا. Sayyid ibn Ajiba says the inner meaning of this is that these are the heavens of the unseen. Um, ماء ثجاجا, this water is the a sign of the divine knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestows upon the hearts of the saints. And then لِنُخْرِجَ بِهِ حَبًّا, by which we bring out grain and plants. So he says it brings out food for the souls, and the food for the souls is the wisdom of the saints. So Sayyid ibn Ajiba, when he's reading and built above you 7 mighty heavens, meaning the 7 stations of spiritual ascension. When they go through it, what happens? Their hearts become a blazing lamp. And send down from the rain clouds meaning the heavens of reference to the heavens or the metaphysical realm. Pouring water is the internal meaning of water is knowledge, and this knowledge that is being poured into the hearts of the saints through it, producing by grain and various plants. So he says this grain is food, but this is a food for the souls and spirits, and the food of souls and spirits is the guidance and wisdom. And the gardens, he says these are the gardens of Tawheed, of oneness, that includes different trees and different fruits, and these fruits have different flavors. So these are the different flavors of this, you could say of the flavors through which the saints or pious believers, this is the taste of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it varies from one fruit to another. It varies also from one believer to another. It depends on what they witness, and so on and so forth. Do the saints progress through the 7 stages in the order that is provided from Tawbah to Taslim? If yes, does one have to perfect the last stage before progressing to the next one? Do the stages happen at the same time? This is a good question. It's a yes and no. So Imam al-Harawi, who authored Manazil al-Sa'irin, the stations of the wayfarers, he mentioned stations, and each station has 3 levels. novice or amateurs, beginners, and then intermediates, and then advanced. So it is almost as if there is it's like a spiral. It's almost like a spiral. So it goes through the amateur level and then comes back to the intermediate and then comes back to the advanced. So it's like a spiral. So Sidi ibn Ajiba here, this is a very consolidated, concise reference to these 7 stations. But within each station, there are different levels, you could say. So the ascension is not just one way. It's not necessarily linear in that sense, but it's more like a. By the way, this is subhanallah. Even this model of the spiral, this model, scholars used in their textbooks. Scholars of what we refer to as the external sciences, like fiqh and language and logic. When they write textbooks, what they do, you find that level that the first text that you study, after you finish it, you go to the second text. Fine. The second text, you find that it includes about 50 or 60 or even more, 70% of what was already covered in the previous text. Only 30% that is new topics, new subjects. And the remaining, the commonality, it's the same as the previous text, but deeper. So one of my dear friends is an Orientalist. I haven't been in touch with him for so long, but I benefited from him. I hope we can return back to be in touch. His name is Eric Van Lit. He has a number of published works. By the way, he has a book on Alam al-Mithal, the world of image. So I remember Eric had this brilliant statement. He said that the Islamic tradition, the Islamic tradition, and I think he's I don't know. I mean, I haven't been in touch with him for quite some time now. But when we met, he was a Christian, a Dominican Christian. But he was saying that the Islamic tradition, the way he views it, he says it's the model of it is a model of evolution rather than revolution. Evolution rather than he's not using evolution in the Darwinian sense, but what he means that it evolves rather than it revolts. Because if it revolts, it's like sharp turns. But the tradition, holistically, or even the books within a particular science, they evolve, and they evolve in a spiral way. So you begin with level 1, and as you go to level 2, in order to actualize level 2, you have to redo many parts of level 1, but deeper. And then you go to, by doing that, you finish level 1 and 2. And then when you go to level 3, you have to redo many parts of level 2, but deeper. And then you go to level 4, and so on, and so on. This model that the scholars applied when they were writing works in fiqh, when they were writing works in aqidah, in theology, when they were, or creed, when they are writing works in logic, in language, in tafsir, it embodies a model of reality. So even when it comes to the spiritual ascension, it's spiral as well. It is spiral. It evolves. It's not a revolution. It's not like like from point 1 to point 2, and then you go to point 3, and then you go to point 4, and then you go to point 5, and you go. No, it's not like that. It's a spiral. It's a spiral. So by finishing the 7th, you go back again to the 1st, but deeper, and then you go to the 7th, and then you come back again, and so on. So basically, it appears like there are levels that includes each of the 7 stages that progresses. if what I understand from what you said is the way I understand it, yes. I mean, there are levels within these seven stages. Yeah. All right. And then we go back to the external meaning. Um, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Inna yawm al-fasli kana miqata. Indeed, the day of final decision is an appointed time. Like he says, the day of deciding between the creation, so that the good doer is distinguished from the evil doer, and those on the truth become distinct from those who follow falsehood, is at a fixed time in the knowledge and decree of Allah Most High for the purpose of the recompense. It is a time appointed to gather the first and the last, meaning the first of creation and the last of creation, and for the consequent reward and punishment to occur therein. Nobody will be able to bypass it, even by a few moments here and there. And then he said, it is the day the trumpet will be blown. يَوْمَ يُنفَخُ فِي الصُّورِ. And you will all come forth in crowds. Sidi ibn Ajiba says this is the second blowing of the trumpet, because the first establishes the conclusion, and then the second is for resurrection. He says mentioning this serves to magnify and instill deeper fear of that day, as it demonstrates the decision. Inna yawm al-fasli. Al-fasl is the decision. That the decision will be delayed. It is one long period of time that begins with a trumpet being blown and finally ends with the decision and its consequences. Then he says, as for the trumpet, Israfil alayhi salam, the angel who's responsible for that, will blow it. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrated, see, Sidi ibn Ajiba incorporates, when he goes through the external meaning, incorporates language, incorporates narration, so he combines both. That is in reference to the type of tafsir which we covered in the 2 days ago. It says, when Allah created this narration of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet ﷺ said, when Allah created the heavens and the earth, He also created the trumpet and gave it to Israfil. He has placed it on his mouth and fixed his gaze towards the throne, waiting to be given the order to blow. When he will be given the order, he will blow such that nothing will remain alive. So this is the first blow, except that which Allah wills. This is He's saying the trumpet will be blown and all those in the heavens and all those on the earth will fall dead, except that Allah wills. Is referring to the verse that says so. Then he will be ordered to blow a second time, whereby nothing dead will remain except that it will be resurrected and stand. This is his saying. Then it will be blown again, and they will rise up at once, looking on. He says, furthermore, the stage of rising from the graves that lies between the blowing of the trumpet and people coming in crowds has been elided, as a way of alluding to how quickly they will come. This is similar to his saying, so we inspired Musa, strike the sea with your staff, and the sea was split. You will come in crowds in various conditions and different states, according to the differences in your actions. Some of you will be riding, others flying or walking, some extremely light and others heavily laden, some even on their faces, and other horrendous conditions. This is as He Most High says, beware of the day we will summon every people with their leader. طيب. Okay, let us move on. I apologize. I just had to fix something on the other screen because um I like to compare the English with the Arabic. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا وَسُيِّرَتِ الْجِبَالُ فَكَانَتْ سَرَابًا. The sky will be split open, becoming many gates. They will split open for the descent of the angels. The past tense has been used here due to its occurrence being firmly established. Um, Sidi ibn Adiba mentioned here one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses past tense for future events. And I say one reason because this is the reason that is suitable for the external meaning of the verses. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses past tense, and this is a rhetorical style in Arabic. You refer to something that did not occur yet using the past tense to emphasize its inevitability, that it is firmly established and it's inevitable. It will happen no matter what. So you use it past tense for the future. The other meaning, it's future for us, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not bound by time. So it is future for us, but for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not future. This is kind of difficult to grasp by rationally speaking. But it is rational, by the way. But because Imam al-Razi says that the most difficult aspect in natural philosophy is the philosophy of time, understanding what time is. Time is more difficult, the reality of time is more difficult to grasp than the reality of space. Because space is more physical, time is more abstract. Scholars always, philosophers, theologians had a very, very difficult time trying to define what time is and the different sorts of time. And they wrote extensive writings trying to define what is time and also what is the now, what we call now. What is that? And we're not talking about some kind of a quantification of a second, millisecond, that type of thing. What is this concept of that we call now? So scholars wrote extensively and they have different approaches. And Imam al-Razi, in his last work that he authored called Al-Matalib Al-Aliya fil Ilm Al-Ilahi, he did a comparison between the Aristotelian view of time and the Platonic view of time, meaning Plato's view of time. And Imam al-Razi took different shifts throughout his works, beginning from Al-Mabahith Al-Mashriqiyya until his very late work, Al-Matalib Al-Aliya. He kind of went back and forth. And in some cases, he said, I still cannot choose an opinion. In some of his works, he said, I cannot choose an opinion. It's so difficult. To me, both opinions are equal. I cannot prefer one over the other. And there is this concept of the natural time and this concept of a metaphysical time. This is present in the works of Sayyidi Muhyiddin al-Arabi and the scholars of his school like Sayyidi Dawood al-Qaysari. They wrote extensively in this matter, what time is. And also Ibn Sina has different views of time and so on and so forth. And they distinguish even linguistically, or rather, terminologically, between the term zaman and the term dahr and the term sarmad, because all of these, they denote a concept of time, but in different ways. Long story short, the external meaning, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses past tense for the future, it refers to inevitability, something that is firmly established. But in the internal meaning, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses past tense for something that was going to happen in the future, the internal meaning is that this is something that is already concluded for Allah, because Allah is not part of the timeline. See, Allah is not part of the timeline. So we are in a timeline, so we are here and we are anticipating something that will happen there. So it is future for us. But Allah is not, Allah is with us, but not in the timeline that we are in. See? This is how the scholars would say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is before the world, with the world, and after the world. So he's not in the world. He's before it, he's with it, he's after it, but not in it. He's not bound by the time and space. So Allah is not in the timeline. Allah is outside the timeline. طيب. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala figuratively has an equal distance to all aspects in this timeline. It's not like the creation of Sayyidina Adam is too far in the past for him than our present time. It is too far in the past for us because we are in the same timeline. So we look past towards Sayyidina Adam, we look future towards the Day of Judgment. So it is too far for us. But Allah is not in the timeline. He's outside the timeline. So he has an equal distance, figuratively, because it's not physical, to each and every point of the timeline. So he refers to it in the past because for him it is concluded. For him it is concluded. There's nothing new. I mean, the whole thing, the whole timeline is as if nothing happened. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's as if nothing happened. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, sometimes people miss these meanings. They think that things unfold as they unfold for us, they unfold for him. No. I know it is very difficult to grasp. This is why he's Allah. So for him, it all has been concluded. It's not like in other words, Allah is not waiting. Allah is not waiting, because you wait. It means that there's a time that you're passing through time during your wait. Allah doesn't wait. We wait. Why? Because time runs through us. So we wait. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, time does not run through him. So for that, this is a more, you don't have to say that this is an internal meaning, but you could say it's a deeper meaning of the external meaning. Time is also creation of Allah, depending on how you define it. Time for Ash'ari theologians is not created, because time is not an entity. Time originated but not created. Created means makhluq, so it's an entity. Originated means hadith, it has a beginning. But they say they say time is a measurement. So it's a mental conceptualization, not something that exists extramentally for Ash'ari theologians. They say this is where you connect something that you know with something that you anticipate. So you say, I will meet you at sunrise. Sunrise is known. Meeting you is anticipated. So it's something that is mental. It's a mental conceptualization, a mental relation of two events occurring. One that I know, and the other one is something that I anticipate. I'll meet you at 6 o'clock. 6 is determined. Meeting you is not determined. So when you connect what is determined with what is not determined, that this type of relationship, we call it time. This is for the Ash'ari theologians. So therefore, they would not say it's makhluk because it's not an entity, but they would say it's hadith, it is originated. But anyways, this is, I think we're getting too theological and philosophical. I apologize for that. Because Allah is not bound time and space, Shaykh, so we can't say something is too far near for it. Correct. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not bound by time and space, so far and near. These are relations that describe our relationship with the world around us. We are in the eternal now, trying to grasp past. We are in the eternal now, trying to grasp events past, present, and future. I would like to pass the question, if you would allow me. Can you shed light on don't curse dahr, because Allah is the. So the Prophet ﷺ did not say لا تسبوا الزمان. He said لا تسبوا الدهر. Now, scholars of theology differ than Sufis in understanding this hadith. Theologians, they say that this is figurative, and the meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is the one who changes the time, and He's the one that brings, He's the one who brings change with time and through time. And therefore, cursing time boils down to being resentful towards what unfolds with time and through time. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who creates these events, and He's the one who brings them forth. So cursing the time is a sign, is an indication, signifies resentment with the one who brings through time and with time. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings events and creates things with time. So cursing the time boils down to resentment towards what has been predestined and with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because He's the one that, as mentioned in the hadith, أُقَلِّبُ اللَّيْلَ وَالنَّهَارِ, I change the day and night, or I change the night and day, meaning I am the one who brings forth the different events and occurrences in the night and the day. So if you curse the night and the day, if you curse the time, because people, when they curse the time, they're basically cursing what is taking place in that time. So when they're cursing what is taking place in that time, well, what is taking place by the will of Allah. So this is how theologians look at this. All right. Sufis, they take a different perspective. They say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say Ana zaman. He said Ana dahr. So they distinguish between az-zaman, which is time, and ad-dahr. But explaining this would take from us quite a time, and it's a little bit deep in philosophy. Sayyidi Muhyiddin al-Arabi takes this hadith face value. So he considers ad-dahr as one of the divine names. And it's as if, and I'm not saying this is what he's saying, it's as if he sees time, sees ad-dahr as a, again, as if, I'm trying to explain it casually, so don't hold me in terms of the terminologies, don't hold me to it. It's as if he's understanding ad-dahr, I am the eternal or the eternity. Something similar to that. Something similar to that. Okay. And then he says, on that day, the sky will be filled with doors, paths, and openings, whereas there are no such openings in it today. And the mountains will be blown away, becoming like a mirage. He says the mountains will be uprooted from their places first, whereafter they will be set in motion in the air as they are in their current shape. He says, will the mountains be blown away before or after the resurrection? If they are blown away before, the resurrection will occur on totally leveled and bare ground. He says this is what the apparent wording of the Quran suggests. He's saying, beware of the day we will blow the mountains away and you will see the earth laid bare, and we will gather all mankind, leaving none behind. It says also, he Most High said, and the earth and mountains will be lifted up and crushed with one blow. He says the second opinion is that they will be blown away after resurrection. This is the apparent meaning of the verse, as well as Surah Al-Qari'ah. It says Abu Sa'ud has restricted himself to this opinion. So you could see this is one of the key sources that Sayyidi ibn Ajiba resorted to in interpreting the external meanings of the Quran. He said, meaning Abu Sa'ud, Allah shall replace the earth and change its forms, and he will blow the mountains away in this terrifying manner when everyone will be gathered after the second blowing. He says, Sayyid ibn Ajiba, Allah knows best the reality of the matter. So for him, both opinions, he's out of, scholarly honesty. He's saying Imam Abu Sa'ud is a great scholar, takes the second position, says, for me, Allah knows best the reality of the matter, meaning both opinions are, equally possible. No. So the two opinions, one opinion is that the mountains will be blown away um, will be blown away before the resurrection, or will be blown away after the resurrection. Imam Abu Sa'ud takes the opinion, or the second opinion, that it will be after resurrection. Sidi ibn Ajiba is saying both are equally possible. طيب. Okay, we can stop here, inshallah, because if we the second verse mentions hellfire, and I don't think we will be able to finish what is the reference to hellfire in order to get to the reference of paradise. And our teachers, they taught us not to end a class on a bad note. So what we covered thus far is that the sky will be split open, becoming many gates, and the mountains will be blown away, becoming like a mirage. So we end here better than ending on a bad note. So inshallah, next time we can speak about the hereafter, the day of judgment, and we can conclude with paradise, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it our conclusion. Jazanillah ta'ala wa iyyakum. I hope inshallah that you benefited from the class. I know Surah Amma is taking, it's a long surah in comparison to the other surahs in the Juz' Amma. Hopefully, inshallah, we can conclude Surah An-Naba tomorrow, inshallah. And then our aim afterwards is to get into Surah Al-A'la, inshallah. And then afterwards, we'll try to cover some of the short surahs like Surah Al-Asr and then Surah Al-Ikhlas, Al-Mu'awwidhatain, inshallah ta'ala. جزاكم الله تعالى خيرا وبارك الله تعالى فيكم. إن شاء الله we'll see you tomorrow, inshallah.